Welcome back. You're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, reaching you live from Lagos. Reminder of our top stories. Leader of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaki, ends rumors of his death as he makes first public appearance in about 2 years. Thanks Nigerians for their prayers. One person killed in communal clash in Makurdi, the Benue state capital, as controversy rages over the claim of alleged camping of killer herdsmen in Tunga, Nasarawa state. Despite claim of fuel availability in the country, Nigerians continue to grapple with the scarcity of the product in parts of the country. And Iran vows to retaliate fresh US sanctions on the head of its judiciary. For more on our top stories and others, please visit our website. It's channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channelsweb. Log on to m.channelstv.com to watch us on your mobile device or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows devices from their respective stores. The Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You'll also have access to the Eyewitness feature, which you can use to share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu and follow the instructions. It appears the issue of the killings by herdsmen is not likely to go off the media anytime soon, particularly as the debate for the adoption of ranching as an option continues. There are also concerns in some quarters that the ongoing crisis may trigger a food crisis.
The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization reveals that between 2014 and 2016, about 795 million people are hungry in a global population of about 7.3 billion people. 780 million people, or 98.1% of the hungry people, live in developing countries, including Nigeria. The UN's population projection states that the dietary consumption patterns of the world is expected to surge to about 9 billion by 2050. The UN is also forecasting that Nigeria will be the third most populated country in the world by 2050. For these reasons, the government, through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, is stepping up action on the agricultural transformation agenda of the government, with the aim of sustaining the modules of improving food security for the nation. The Agriculture Promotion Policy 2016 to 2020, also known as the Green Alternative, focuses on comprehensive livestock development, input access and transformation, expanded access to financial markets, value addition and processing support, and agricultural water management, and others. Nigeria is the world's largest producer of yam, accounting for over 70 to 76% of the world production, or 35.017 million metric tons, with the value put at $5.654 billion. Also, the forex restrictions on 41 items, including rice, by the Central Bank of Nigeria, may have brought some benefits. This has led to a remarkable increase in local production of many of the listed items, such as rice, and reduction in their import.
Since harvest of rice has begun in earnest, the price of rice will become reasonable, and the cost of rice, as we've been hearing of, would have reduced substantially.
According to the Food and Agricultural Organization, the humanitarian crisis in the northeast region arising from Boko Haram insurgency in the country is affecting about 17 million people in Nigeria and some neighboring countries, exacerbating food insecurity owing to low food production and disruption of food markets. The prolonged crisis, especially in the northeastern part and other parts of the country, owing to clashes between herdsmen and farmers, appear to threaten the goal of the government's agriculture revolution plan. Benue State, known as the food basket of the nation, is currently bearing the brunt of this unresolved crisis, as the farmers now find it difficult to carry on with their age-old farming activities in the face of herdsmen attacks. Whichever way this challenge is handled will definitely have a huge impact on the country's food production. in either boosting the food production itself in the long run or imperil the plan for Nigeria's food security.
Let's get more perspective on this issue. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by an agriculturist, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji. I want to thank you so much indeed for coming on the news. It's a very peculiar name indeed, it is. But how serious do you think is this threat posed to the federal government's food security agenda, considering the clashes and the attacks that we've seen in Benue State and indeed other parts of the country?
Well, before we had the clashes, Nigeria was not food secure. So with the clashes now, you have like Benue producing yams, and we rank the highest in the world. You'll find many of them not going to the farm to produce what they're used to. So food production, and it's affecting Taraba and other states also. So 2018 that we're in now, there is likely to be some form of food shortages.
Even notwithstanding the government's food reserves they have in silos, grains, for instance?
I'm not sure those grains are adequate. The content of those grains are adequate enough to secure our food security, considering the demands on them, especially livestock. So we don't have enough silos, and the grains that is normally stored there, we had challenges with maize in the last 2 years with armyworm and stem borer, which are diseases affecting maize. So that has affected the price of maize, which has trickled down on poultry products. So generally, we don't have enough in those reserves, and we may have some issues to deal with.
Now, let's look at the core of these concerns that is being raised. Many people are opposed to this establishment of colonies and ranches. As a matter of fact, even the, what you call them now, the herders themselves, they've also alluded to this fact and taken this position too. But in the long and short of it, what do you view is the way forward, considering international best practices?
Well, we need the ranches. The colonies is also a good idea. However, I think we're focusing too much on the herdsmen. Cattle business is a business that anyone can learn and go into. So if you want to develop ranches, it doesn't have to necessarily be for the nomads. Encourage the people in each state to go into cattle production, the ranching, the dairy. And when you do that, then you get people involved, not necessarily the herdsmen. They are very minute in the production of beef and cattle products. Bulk of what we consume, the livestock we consume, especially with cattle, is imported into the country. The animals are brought into the country. So the herdsmen are too small in numbers to create all those things around them. We need to encourage citizens of each state to go into this business. Don't forget, when you start ranching, then that means it's no longer free food. Once it's not free food, then they have to pay for it. Once you add up those costs, then it's not affordable for those ranchers. And you heard from the Tonga spokesman saying that they also don't believe that ranching will work for them. What needs to happen to them is for experimental plots or pilot plots to be set up so that they can see, because they believe from their conversation that their animals will not do well in confinement. So a lab to a field approach may not work. It needs to be field to lab approach. So we need to integrate different systems to get this done, but it's a business.
I think that the Veterinary Research Institute in Jos, Plateau State, in VOM to be specific, is having some of those kind of models already, where cattle is being fattened and then prepared for meat, and those kind of research are ongoing. Will it make a good idea to draw from the NVRI, the National Veterinary Research Institute, to see how they have been able to model that and see if that is applicable to ranching?
Well, if I would say we take a model from L&Z, which is the biggest dairy producing organization in Nigeria, private sector. If you take VOM, some will say it's government. But L&Z, they've been able to bring the Fulanis, the farmers together, and take off the milk from them, feed them, residue from the farms to feed it. We need to coexist. What I'm saying is, you see, these models have worked in time past. When we weren't having issues when the Igbos were depending on Yorubas and Hausas to buy their palm oil. When the Northerners, when we were buying granules from them, and when we were buying kola nuts from us, because we were trading together, we were not fighting. The moment you depend on the other person to sustain yourself financially and economically, you don't fight, you protect others' interests. So L&Z in Kano has done a fantastic job, and so we only need to scale that up across. VOM has a lot of models that we need to implement. Implementation is what I see as a challenge affecting those things. They're not new. It's just that it's just new to the general public now.
Brilliant. I must thank you so much indeed for talking to us, but I'm really concerned. And your name, African Farmer, Mogaji, is that an adopted name? How did it come about? Name?
I legally changed it 13 years ago. So my bank accounts, international passports, you have African Farmer.
Brilliant. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji, for talking to us. He's an agriculturist.
Thank you.
Many thanks. No fewer than 10 people were killed in the early hours of today and several others injured during an attack by suspected herdsmen at 2 villages in Benue local government area of Kaduna State. Benue local government is located in the central part of the state and is notorious for kidnapping and cattle rustling. An indigene of the area told our correspondent that the attack by the herdsmen occurred at Dangaji and Angwar Gajere villages. He also reported that the gunmen burnt down several houses as the villagers ran to neighboring communities for safety. Although the Kaduna State Police Command is yet to confirm the latest attacks, the spokesman of the Kaduna State government, Samuel Arwan, describes the attacks as inhuman and barbaric. Moving on to other stories now, more petrol stations continue to get the red card from the Department of Petroleum Resources for selling petrol above the regulated pump price of 145 naira per litre and under-dispensing the product as well. 2 filling stations have recently been sealed off in Yola, an action the controller of the service in Adamawa and Taraba State says will ward off other detractors.
Normalcy is gradually returning to filling stations across the country as trucks now distribute premium motor spirit daily across the states.
The situation now is very, very far better because as of yesterday we got over 40 trucks for the 2 states, which means that the situation is really improved. And only in Yola town today we have 13 stations are selling.
Nevertheless, consumers in some states still find it difficult to get in the product.
I've been searching for fuel. I have passed over 10 fueling stations. I couldn't get any. So I have to make up my mind to come and follow the long queue here at the mega station.
The price is still the same, 143 as usual, but some filling station you get at the rate of 175, 185. Like for example, at my village in Michika, I bought fuel per litre at 230.
For petrol stations selling at illegal pump prices, the DPR says it will continue to seal off offenders. Ironically, this government-run mega station in Yola, the state capital, is one of the culprits.
For each pump we find it on the dispensing, we're going to pay 100,000 naira for on the dispensing to the public. And it's not only that, we discover also a station that will divert some of the product. Because if you got a product yesterday and he has sold almost half of it this morning, there's something wrong somewhere. And that's why I requested for his sale book. He doesn't have a record of how much he has sold the product this morning. And that's why that station has to be sealed.
Even as the queues slowly disappear, the DPR hopes that its sanctions get stations to serve consumers better.
When the News at 10 returns, help comes for victims of natural disasters in Niger State 2 years after, as thousands of displaced children in the northeast get USAID education funding assistance. Join us again.
Betway, the premium online sports betting experience, is now live in Nigeria. Simply log on to betway.com.ng and bet on your favorite games and leagues right now. With Betway, betting is easy and convenient. There's no need to have cash. Just pay online, and we're open 24/7. Go to betway.com.ng now. Betway, for the love of the game.